Coming up with creative ideas can be one of the hardest challenges that an editor ever comes across, but it can also be something fun, rewarding, and just elevating in your editing career. I want to give you guys a couple of techniques to help you generate fresh ideas on the fly while editing. I think the first thing that needs to be set straight is you can have creative ideas on the fly when you need, but it happens automatically. It's, for example, a muscle memory. But for coming up with creative ideas, it's not something you can just flick on, especially at the start of your editing career. The first technique I use to generate creative ideas is changing your environment. A change of scenery can really stimulate your brain and the way that you think. Stuff like going for a walk, visiting a new place, literally rearranging your workspace, anything that is a change of environment can trigger new thoughts. This happens in almost everything. In editing, when I am stuck, I do and have told people multiple times who have asked me what they do when they're stuck, tell them to stare at the blank roof and just visualize the edit. Change of scenery is from the corner in the desk to the bed at the roof. And all of a sudden, something should flicker to your mind. Another thing is mind mapping. So a lot of the times, the problem with creative thinking is that you have too many thoughts. So this technique helps organize your thoughts, identify like the connections between them, and get rid of unrelated thoughts. So we all understand that as you're thinking through something, what you find is that all of a sudden, 9 out of the 12 things you were thinking about did not even matter, but they were taking up a decent amount of your brain space. And so one of the ways around this is with mind mapping. You start with the central concept of what your edit is, and you branch out from there. The way you do this in editing is you look at your last clip, stick in all of your clips, you put them all next to your first clip and see just what works. Brainstorming without judgment would be another one. A lot of people struggle with creativity because they get an idea and they go, that was a horrible idea. Now, I'm not saying every idea is fantastic because that would be a lie. Sometimes your ideas are horrible, but sometimes you might come up with, for example, 2 horrible ideas, but when you put those 2 horrible ideas together, they mash into something good, something that you really wanted. The key part of this, though, is no judgment. The moment you judge yourself or have judgment cast onto you, you stop doing what you're doing. You need to write down as many ideas as you can without having judgment of whether they're good or bad. You should only have the judgment of whether they're good or bad after writing them all down. Collaborating with others can be an insane way to get creative ideas. I was recently on a call with Jose, the GOAT. We both have our partners with us in the house. And when we get stuck, we ask for their opinion. They're not even editors, but they have a harsh view. They're going to tell you the truth. And they have a completely different brain to you, which means they're going to be able to come up with something that you might not have even have thought of. Bouncing ideas off friends, strangers, co-workers, anything like that, different perspectives, it can just be an incredible thing. And that is what the community I've got is partly for. You should be able to go in there, ask for inspiration, and get it. Now, this one kind of fits in with that, but it's combining existing ideas. So like I said before, you might have 2 bad ideas that you put together and they become good. You can stack this. It is stackable. You can get 2 fantastic concepts and combine them. You might have something just absolutely unseen before. And if we look at some of our favorite editors, some of the stuff they do is effects you wouldn't even have think would pair together, but they do because they made them pair together, and it is incredible. Now, so far, everything I've said is about freeing yourself in a way. It's about giving yourself creative freedom, letting yourself brainstorm, inviting stuff in. Now, I want to switch to constraints. In a way, limiting yourself can sometimes spark creativity. Constraints can sometimes cause to excel. Have you ever been under a time constraint and locked in to a flow state? This has happened to everyone at least once before. Setting specific constraints or rules, like only using certain materials, colors, themes, half an hour at max, only this effect, can push you to do stuff that you wouldn't have even known was there before. We can also do other stuff that is freeing, like engaging with different forms of media. Now, we are editors. 100% of everything we do is visuals and audio. Now, have you ever read a book and been inspired? Maybe not, maybe you haven't. But all I'm saying is, in the middle of a book, your imagination is running rampant because you are reading words. You cannot see what you're reading, but you can see what you're reading. And it's incredible. So sometimes engaging with different media like books, movies, music is my personal favorite. I get a very strong sense of feeling from music. Anything that we can consider art means that it has some sort of correlation to editing, which is our main art. Which means if you watch other forms of media, there's a good chance you're going to get some really good inspiration, even if you didn't think you were going to. Now, one thing that is very specific about creativity is that it often thrives when you're trying to solve a problem. For example, I have a clip. I shouldn't be thinking, what's a creative idea? I should be thinking, what is the next best clip that can sit here? Then what is the best transition to click these two together? What is the best effect? You should be breaking it down into bite-sized questions that can all be answered. Because trying to answer what's the best clip with the best transition with the best effect, it's just not going to end well at all. Creativity thrives when you're trying to solve a problem, but you can't solve a problem that massive. So break it down into bite-sized problems that can be solved, and your creativity will explode. Another thing people don't take into consideration is what if? What if I added this clip that doesn't work? How do I make it work? What if I made it work? What would that look like? Sometimes you add a clip, right? I added a clip and it did not work. I was like, but I've seen it work. I've seen it work somewhere else. What if I could get this to work? How can I get this to work? I figured out the problem behind it. And it was very surprising. It was something I didn't think could be done. Turns out it could be done. All I had to do was ask, what if it could be done? What if I did it? How would that look? And it happened. I got it to work. And so to leave it at the end, I want to summarize everything that you can do to generate creative ideas in your editing. Changing your environment, mind mapping your project, brainstorming without judgment, collaborating with others or bouncing ideas off of other people, combining existing ideas, bad or good, using constraints like material constraints or time constraints to force the creativity out of your mind, taking breaks, engaging with different forms of art, looking for problems to solve that are bite size, asking what if. So this is how you can come up with creative ideas in your editing. Try this with your next edit and let me know which one works for you.